Ross, Christopher Laud. And day one of the offseason, there will be a lot to go over in the coming days. We will, of course, be there for you for all the news now and all the news to come, if you will, and what certainly will be an interesting, to say the least, offseason. Joining us right now at 10:18 yesterday Pacific time, Sam Amick broke the news. He was the first to let everybody know that Kings general manager Monte McNair had been let go, and we have been talking about some other nuggets, not Denver, other nuggets in his article on The Athletic, which I would invite you to join and subscribe if you have not already. Sam, good morning. How are you, sir?
Good morning, gentlemen. I'm doing just lovely. Nice to be with you.
So, look, I'm not saying give us your source, but just really, would you mind just taking us through the TikTok, if you will, of your thing last night? Because the game had barely ended. Next thing you know, you're tweeting out that Monty's gone. Just as much as you're comfortable with, tell us how that all came together.
Yeah, I mean, a terrible night for the team. Obviously, that a game that they felt decent about going in. They get boat raced. The mood is terrible. I'm trying to check in around the building after the game, and I don't know exactly what to share, but I mean was informed that in real time was happening. Vivek was talking to Monty, and so they wasted no time. I think it was something that was happening either way, but when you add in the vibe of the loss and the ugliness of it all, and I even looked at social media today, and you have Anthony Davis kind of mocking, not mocking, and having fun with the fans because they beat him up, right? Like, and so the Mavs, this organization, like, this is what struck me. This organization that has had the worst PR of any team this entire season. Like, there was something wild to see the Kings kind of deliver them like such a blissful moment. You know what I mean? Najee Marshall I saw him talking to fans, and he said, when are they going to light that beam up? He's like, is it going to be blue tonight? So they were having fun at the Kings' expense, and then obviously the off-season activity started very quickly.
Sam, as Sam's coming to you from, brought to you by Jiffy Lube, obviously Sam coming his reports from The Athletic, and Sam, maybe it's semantics, maybe it's wording, and maybe it doesn't much matter, but kind of the parting of ways are mutually agreed. Maybe Monty also agreed, like, hey, look, if I haven't had all of the freedoms I would like as a GM, I'm not comfortable going forward. Maybe it was as simple as he has been fired. Is the wording in that mean anything? Or, I mean, obviously he's not the GM anymore, but should we read into any of that as part of the story?
Yeah, I mean, listen, when the GM is one moment, and this is the detail at the end of the story, he's addressing the team and telling guys, hey, we'll get them next year, so to speak. And then he's gone. It's like there's a firing component, but it is the information and the insight going into it was that in terms of Monty's part, there was definitely a sense of like, if you're not going to let me run the team, then I don't know that I want to be here anymore. And that had been the type of conversation that people have been wondering, like, is Monty going to put his foot down or not? And so that to me is the mutual part in it. But I mean, one party clearly decided this thing is over, in pretty dramatic form last night.
Sam Amick joining us. Sam, the blurb in your Athletic article that I think really stood out to me and to a lot of people. The following passage, if you will. McNair didn't want to fire Mike Brown, league sources said, and you had reported that a couple weeks ago. And there are internal questions about whether he really wanted to sign DeRozan or trade for LaVine. Tension also existed in recent days between McNair and the ownership group about Christie's future, with Ronadive viewed as the Christie backer. Now, I want to drill down on this as much as we can, because I think that is incredible news, if true. And when I say if true, I'm in no way, as I said earlier, disrespecting you or doubting what you're saying. I think, just to be fair to the Kings, I'm putting that out there. And also, you're saying there are internal questions. So how much can you drill down? Because I think there's a difference between there are internal questions and this is what happened.
I mean, he didn't want Mike fired. He didn't want Doug to be the coach. He didn't want Doug to continue to be the coach. So we can start there. He's the one who didn't want, I mean, as much as I criticized them, and certainly stand by it, for not having a press conference after all of that. And, my stance had been that Vivek should be the one talking, because my information was that he was the one who made the choice. Monty's the one who did not want to do a press conference. And I remember thinking at the time, like, oh boy, like, there are plenty of executives in the league who will tell you that part of the job is just getting up and talking about the thing that the organization did, even if you weren't necessarily behind it. You know what I mean? And so I had felt like, man, I wonder what the mood is between Vivek and Monty, because it's kind of being exposed for all the world to see that there's not alignment here. And so, that's just a little bit more context. The rest of it, like, listen, I talked to Zach last night about his experience in Sacramento and his perspective on his future. And one of the first names out of his mouth was Vivek, because he knows that, Vivek has liked him for a long time, that he obviously greenlighted the restricted free agency offer sheet years ago when Lottie was the GM and Zach was with the Bulls. It's two contracts ago for Zach. But he knows that, like, Zach might still be the best place for him because it's good to be wanted, as he put it, and Vivek wants him. So yes, I strongly believe that played a pivotal part in the way they handled what to prioritize in the Fox trade. If you go back to last summer, when Wes Wilcox, the assistant GM who left recently, was kind of, taking a running point on the DeMar DeRozan signing, Vivek was very involved there and excited about a high profile player and a guy that, that obviously came to town. So, yeah, I mean, he was a driving force behind all those. And I think if left to his own devices, Monty would have built the roster differently.
Sam, you said a lot in there, but one of the things you said that caught my ear is you said Monty did not want Doug as the coach and did not want to keep Doug as the coach. He is the coach as of now. I don't know what going forward, there'll be a GM search. What does this mean, you think, for Doug Christie?
I mean, as of now, it seems like the wind is kind of pointing, to him keeping the job, with a major caveat that the next GM would certainly have a voice on it. Some of this stuff is tricky to report on because, I've already shared publicly what I know, but like, it does feel to some extent like, I'll put it this way. By the time the New Orleans Pelicans said goodbye to Dave Griffin, they already knew that Joe Dumars was going to be the guy. And I don't know if that's the case here or not, but the names have been floating for a while. And we'll see if it ends up being Scott Perry or Calvin Booth. But I think, some of this stuff might have been worked out a little bit already.
And you think Scott, based on his previous relationship with Vivek here and working with Vlade, do you see a scenario most likely at this point that Scott Perry would be the front runner as the GM for next year, with almost certainly Vlade Divac in as an advisor, as he has been?
I do. Scott it's funny, Dave. I forgot how brief of a tenure he had. I mean, I knew it was short, but it was 3 months, April to, maybe 4 months, April to July. And he did a very good job of working with Vivek and having it be, as functional as possible during that short time. If you remember, they got some draft, high profile lottery draft workouts, the type of stuff that they weren't getting at the time because agents, didn't mess with the Kings because their reputation was so bad. They, even though the signings didn't really work, but they, getting veterans, I forget who it was, Zebo and who's the other one? Oh, Vince Carter.
George Hill, Vince Carter, and Zebo.
Yeah, and it was just like, there was a sense that like he's a very good relationship person. He's been in the league for 25 years. I mentioned Joe Dumars. He was with Joe in Detroit when they won the title in 2004 and was there for that whole run, about 8 years. So he's got a good relationship with Vivek, and that remains the case to this day. The Vlade part that you kind of mentioned as an aside, I do think he'll be around, and for what it's worth, and the organization, is clearly comfortable kind of, putting this out there is that he will not be part of the front office in any way, formally. But as you guys know, we've talked about it before. There's a lot of noise about him being around, and even beyond that, it's just the whole old Kings thing. I mean, Mike Bibby, a new Sac State coach, was there last night. Tasia and Bobby and the whole gang. So we'll see, how many of them end up being part of this new crew.
Sam Amick joining us. Sam, I know you had mentioned on here before and in other pieces on The Athletic that, when the offseason gets here, which is now present for the Kings, that a guy like Domantas Sabonis would kind of do a check-in on, and which is understandable. Every player should do that, and what the organization looks like, what the thought is going forward. I know DeRozan post-game last night was frustrated, as he should be. The whole group should be. The way it ended, kind of what he agreed to come to what it looks like now. What's your read on kind of what you think Sabonis will hear and what DeRozan is feeling? And just, it looks messy. The game was awful. How they're all kind of approaching what the players feel like with now knowing a new GM will be in place and maybe a new coach.
Yeah, I mean, they got, you guys know, exit interviews this morning. I'll probably head up there and check them out. It's, messy is the word. Last night was wild, guys, and you can probably hear, I didn't get a ton of sleep. I'm dragging this morning. And just to answer your question, Jay, you had the game itself, but then you had the Game of Thrones vibe around the game when it was Rich Paul was in town. I did think it was wild and fitting that he was literally sitting in the seats where Rashae Fox used to sit. That's a hell of a way for this particular season to end. But Rich is, part of his, Andy Miller is his coaching agent, and Doug Christie is a Clutch Sports client. And so that was partly, Rich's presence, and he also represents Zach LaVine, and a hell of a twofer given the Kings situation right now. But in one corner, you had that camp, Domas's agent, Greg Lawrence from Wasserman was there. DeMar's agent, Aaron Goodwin, was there. And you just had camp upon camp upon camp. All these people being what the hell are the Kings going to do? What am I going to do with my guy? That type of thing. With Domas, I mean, listen, you do not have to be a basketball expert to watch that game last night and go, oh yeah, it's not a great fit for this dude. I talked to Zach LaVine about him and Domas and hopefully write some of that today. But the fact that they had, moments last night that it's not even, at least with it's your turn, my turn. With Zach and Domas at times, it's like, my turn, and then the other guy's like, nope, my turn. Like they're just not in sync. Domas flashed to the middle one time and was looking for the ball, and Zach didn't give it to him. And then he came up and Zach wanted the high screen, and it was like Domas didn't give it to him. It was just, the chemistry is not good. Zach did express some confidence that with the camp, they could get better and that they would need, something that they've got to make work. Because the thing is, while I don't think Sabonis, I'll focus on Sabonis and DeRozan. While I don't think either one of them is very happy at the moment, Domas in particular, like he has a massive contract with multiple years left, and the prospect of saying, "Hey, I want to trade," is not, if he wouldn't to qualify. If he did that, it's just not that easy. De'Aaron Fox was a different story, in terms of age and production and contract status. He had, just the 1 year left. So change wise, we'll see what happens. If I had to handicap it, I feel like the odds are of DeMar being the one who might wind up elsewhere next year. We'll see what happens.
And part of that, I imagine, is because LaVine's just not only an immovable contract damn near, but because of Vivek's fascination with him. Yeah.
I mean, he's extension eligible this summer, and I think that conversation I think there will be a conversation. And yeah, I mean, they, for like it or not, like they prioritized him in the Fox trade, and so yeah, I do see him differently.
So just to recap, Mike Brown fired, Monte McNair fired, the most tradable asset on the team traded for an immovable contract that may very well get that contract extended. DeMar DeRozan, odds are gone. Domantas Sabonis not happy, and almost certainly, barring a miracle, no first-round pick. A former assistant GM, the favorite to take over a guy whose contract wasn't renewed 2 years ago with the New York Knicks. No disrespect, just a fact. And that GM is going to know that the owner would very much like the current head coach to remain, even though generally GMs hire their own coaches. Have I said anything that's inaccurate or you'd like to push back on?
No, I mean, Scott, I guess the only thing I will, qualify on Scott is that, not even trying to be glib, but he has last 5, 6, 7 years, he got a master's degree in dealing with tricky owners, because he is somebody who is given credit for dealing with James Dolan in New York and doing a nice job with it. And while they didn't renew him and they pivoted to Leon Rose, I will also say that he's somebody who, this always struck me, that the Knicks have I don't want to get in the weeds too much, but a big front office group where, it's Leon Rose and Worldwide West and, a bunch of guys. Frank Zanon is out there. And those guys still swear by Scott, which is not the norm. Usually there's just inevitably some bad blood or, and that wasn't the case. Scott was just somebody who, they didn't renew him. And Leon, who was a prominent CAA agent that James Dolan decided to hire, took over. But, Scott's had a very good career. So I guess I'm just taking a moment to be positive on Scott. But the rest of it, like Dave, I actually meant to mention it, like the tweet you put out last night, I think it was, where you laid out all the different moves in a similar fashion that you just did right now. Like the one word I would push back on with you is that you said goodbye to the GM who you entrusted to do all these things. And obviously, as we've kind of detailed, there wasn't much entrusting happening.
That's fair.
So,
that's fair. And that's even scarier. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's 100% fair, Sam. And your article came out after that tweet. And I couldn't agree with you more. And Jason, that to me, that's worse than losing yesterday. That's worse. That is the single worst, scariest hair standing up on my arm thing I've heard.
Yeah, and I guess I would follow on that, Sam, with kind of to piggyback off that. I know we're back to it's one job of 30, but as your candidates, you're reporting on Calvin Booth, Scott Perry, and if there becomes a larger list, who knows? But they would have to know that previous GMs maybe have felt that they haven't been able to have the say. And besides it being the one of 30, why would the job be desirable?
I mean, I guess you could make an argument for like a good example, as messy as it was, and I think Monty likely goes to one of his kind of, familiar spots in Houston or Philly, because Daryl Morey, previously at the Rockets, is in Philly now. But like Monty is going to be able to leave town and say, I was the first executive in 20 years to get this organization to the playoffs, and like take, draw the good out of it without having the stink stick to him for the most part, I think. Now, I don't think it was great for Monty that like the way that they functioned and just around the league, people knew that the West was handling a lot of stuff as if he was a GM at times. But that's a little more specific. I guess the argument would be that if you come in and succeed in this environment, in any way, you're going to get a lot of credit. And then if you made mistakes, which certainly I think Monty would need to admit, there were mistakes made on his part as well. But like a lot of those will probably get forgotten because of the reputation and the history of the organization.
Last thing for you, Sam, and I don't blame you if you don't, and it's a long off season. Do you have any? Have you checked in with any of the minority ownership and their feelings currently right now, and how things are going?
That's a question. I love you, buddy, but that I probably wouldn't answer on the air.
Okay.
But you should call me. Let's talk off the air.
Sam Amick of The Athletic joining us. You can read him and his excellent coverage. And I stood in front of you. Well, I've been standing in front of you, Sam. Not that I should. I'm embarrassed I have to, but I'll say it again. Your reporting has been spot on throughout the year. You have, despite your family being here and your love of the city and your work as the beat writer for the Kings, for the Sacramento Bee, the paper of record for years and years, there are some out there that would, when I say dare, question whether there's an agenda, whether or not you enjoy it, whether or not. And I have spent plenty of time with you enough to know that it's the opposite of enjoy. You'd love nothing more than to see this team do well for the city. But that being said, at risk of personal relationships and all the things that go with it, you've done phenomenal reporting on this team. And you're a personal friend of mine, but I'd be saying it to you if you weren't. Thank you. Please keep it up. We need to have the warts sunlighted so we can disinfect it. And I think a lot of people really honestly owe you an apology, and they can do that by subscribing to The Athletic and reading the fine work you've done and that you will continue to do along with Anthony Slater. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate all that. And a quick final thought. I mean, you are correct about, last night watching the game, remembering how much fun people had a couple years ago. It was a little, I'm not a fan, but man, it was a little depressing. You know what I mean? Like it was kind of the end of a little chapter where they had an uptick. So, for the sake of the fans, without question, hopefully they can get it back to that place.
Amen. That's Sam Amick. Sam, brother, we'll talk to you next week. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Take
man.
care. All right. We are way late for a break. Let me outline the rest of the show pretty much for you. When we come back, we'll recap, obviously, a little bit about what Sam just said. Also, we need to also look back. What the hell?